focus. Hi. Hey. Hello. How are ya? Welcome back to another video. Today is my October wrap-up. This is every single book that I read in October. I read 7, which compared to some other booktubers, I know that that's like nothing. There are people that are out there reading like 20-something books a month. That couldn't be me because I have 1, ADHD, and 2, another job. So I do what I can, and honestly, I'm really proud of myself for reading 7 books this month. Granted, I was only able to do that because I think every single one of them I did have access to the audiobook version, so I was able to listen to it while I was doing my other things that I had to do. And to me, that's like the easiest way to get through a book the fastest. So I'm really glad that I got to do that. The first book that I read this month was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I really like this book. I actually gave this book 5 stars. It was published in 2022. I just feel like that's helpful knowledge to know when something was published. I think that a lot of context can be drawn from when a book came out, knowing like when it was written, what was going on. Sometimes it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't really in this case, but yeah, it was written in 2022. Anyway, I love this book. I love this couple. Nate and Stassi are literally so cute together. I feel like there was something about this book that just felt like a little bit more realistic because their relationship, like, it wasn't super linear in that they're falling for each other and then they get together and it's all great and the book ends. Like, they get together at a certain point in the book and then you're like watching their relationship, and I really like that because I feel like sometimes it's kind of sad when they don't get together until like the 11th hour after the 3rd act conflict, and you're just like, well, cool, I'm glad you guys are together now, but like, what is your life like, you know? So I really appreciated that we got to see a lot of that. I will say, she's spicy. This book is real spicy. So if you're into that, you'll be into this. But if you're not, maybe skip it. That's up to you. Use your discretion. But I would give it like a 4 out of 5 on the spicy scale. I don't really know what I would call a 5, to be honest, because maybe I've never gotten to level 5, but I feel like this is a 4 because it's like it's a lot. So there you go. Now you know that. I didn't have a problem with it, but you might. This book also starts at the beginning of the school year. This is about 2 college students. The girl, Anastasia, she is a figure skater. The guy, Nate, he is a hockey player, and they are forced to share a rink. Normally their school has at least 2 rinks that they talked about, and so everybody's got their own place to practice, but something happens to one of the rinks and they have to share one. And they're both not the happiest about that. So I wouldn't call it like enemies to lovers, but it's definitely not like love at first sight, you know? Yeah. So it starts at the beginning of the school year and then goes through most of the school year. So I really feel like you could probably read this at any time, but if you wanted to read it about when the book starts, I would say like September. 5 stars, really liked it. Trigger warning though for disordered eating. If that's something that would trigger you, maybe skip this one. It's not like the hugest plot, but it is in there. The second book that I read in October was Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult. Let me just say, maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I always thought that it was Jodi Picoult. It's not. Like, I listened to the audiobook and she's like, hey, it's Jodi Picoult, and I was like, that is not how I thought that was pronounced. So if you also thought that it was pronounced Picoult, there you go. It's actually Pico, as in Pico de Gallo. I went into this book completely blind. My mom read it and said it was amazing, like a 6-star read for her, and she was like, you've got to read it. So I put it on hold at the library, and I got it a lot quicker than I thought, so I was just like, okay, I'll start it. I will say, I really enjoyed going into it blind. If you want to do that as well, skip this part, I guess. But I really, really liked this book. It's something that, like, the plot has stayed with me. I've thought about it a lot since finishing. I initially gave it 4 stars and have since gone back and changed it to 5 because I've thought about it so much. This book has a dual POV. One is this woman named Olivia, and then the other one is this girl named Lily. And I really liked getting both of their perspectives. Olivia's point of view goes forward in time, and then Lily's point of view goes backwards in time. That is something that I felt a little bit confused about, I will say. It might be because I didn't have the physical book in front of me, which is normally something that I try to do. Like, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I try to have the physical book or the version of it on Kindle available to me so that if I want to sit down and read through it, I can. But I didn't. I was just listening to it, so it took me a minute to get that, like, time was moving backwards in one of the point of views, because, to be honest, I wasn't paying attention whenever they'd say the date at the beginning of each chapter. But yeah, so there's that. One point of view moves forward, the other one moves backwards. And I really liked that because I feel like I don't ever think I've read a book that did that. I've definitely read books where it switches back and forth from the past and the present, but normally they still move forward to the point where, like, by the end of the book, in the past tense, you've pretty much caught up to where the beginning of the book starts in the present tense, you know what I mean? I will say it leans a little bit towards mystery. I think that it would probably be classified as literary fiction, but there's definitely a mystery going on the whole time. You're trying to figure out what happened. And I really liked that because I wasn't expecting that at all. I just thought it was going to be like a regular literary fiction. It does remind me of the show called Defending Jacob. It was on Apple TV. It came out a couple years ago. Chris Evans is in it. And a lot of it really reminds me of that. So if you've seen that, then, like, you'll get a good, like, gist of, like, what this book is about. But I feel like I don't want to say much about the plot, to be honest, because it was, like, really special not knowing where it was gonna go. A lot of it does take place in a courtroom. There's a lot of that. So if you find that boring, give it a chance, to be honest. But I totally get it if, like, that's not your thing, you know? The twist in this book had me absolutely floored. I had to, like, pause it for a second because I was, like, so not expecting a twist to even come. And then there's, like, another thing at the end. Like, I can't say anything without giving spoilers, but it's so good. Genuinely, it's so good. Also, the information about bees and honey throughout was super thorough and honestly really interesting and entertaining to me. One of the main characters, Olivia, she is a beekeeper and she has been for years, and it's like something that has been passed down from her father. And so a lot of the ways that she looks at the situation that's happening in the book, she relates them back to bees and how bees work and how they make honey, and it just kind of helps her understand things. I think that you really get to see life through her eyes. And hear, like, how she relates to things just by her talking about bees and honey. And I would give a trigger warning for domestic violence and also suicide. Also pretty intense bullying and transphobia. The third book that I read in October was Wish You Were Here, also by Jodi Picoult. Another recommendation from my mom. My mom seems to be on a little bit of a Jodi Picoult kick. By the way, I had never read any of her books before this month, so I'm new to this author. This one is also literary fiction. It was published in 2021. Up top, the whole plot revolves around COVID. It starts on March 13th of 2020. I'm pretty sure we all remember where we were at least that week, if not that day. And I felt like that was really triggering to me. Like, I have intentionally avoided all books that take place during the pandemic or heavily talk about the pandemic, just because I do think that it's really triggering. Like, it's the biggest thing that, like, anyone that's alive right now has been through. And though I did not lose anyone during COVID. I had it multiple times. It wasn't fun. It greatly affected my family, myself, my friends. So if that's something that's really upsetting to you, honestly, skip this one. In hindsight, I kind of wish that I hadn't read it, which is a strong statement to make. In the end, I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's not a bad book by any means, but it's really not something that I wanted to read about. And I really feel like if that's something that you don't want to read about either, you shouldn't. Because it was hard. It was really hard to read about. Especially because in the early days of COVID, we didn't know what was going on. And so reading that, like going through the main character's eyes in that confusion that she has, and listening to the news through her perspective. The main character's boyfriend is a doctor. Like, that was rough, honestly. That was really rough. This book tells the story of Diana O'Toole. She is an up-and-comer in the art auction world, which is something I have no idea about, but she likes where she's at in life. She likes where she's at in her career. Like I said, she's got this perfect boyfriend. He's a doctor. Long story short, they're supposed to go on this vacation the week that like COVID really hits the US, specifically New York where they live. We all know that was like a huge epicenter. They're supposed to go on this vacation, and because he's a doctor and he has to stay at work, he ends up telling her, you go, I'll just stay here, but like you enjoy the vacation. And big surprise, she ends up getting stuck in the Galapagos Islands because all flights are grounded, nobody's allowed to move, nobody's allowed in or out of most countries at this point, and so she ends up getting stuck there. This book tells the story of what happens to her while she's there and the people that she meets, the connections that she makes. A portion of the way through the book, there is a big twist. Talking to my mom about it, because we both read it, she really loved the twist. She thought it was like super creative. From my perspective, I felt like it was a bit of a cop-out. It kind of felt like it made the rest of the book hold less weight to me, and I really didn't like that. And so for that reason, I feel like I wouldn't really recommend this book, to be honest. I feel bad saying that about any book, honestly, because I know that authors take a really long time to write books and they put their whole heart and soul into it, and I feel bad like trashing anybody else's work. And this book, I'm genuinely not trashing it, like you'd know if I was trashing a book. But it's just, it wasn't my favorite, and it was so not my favorite in a lot of ways that I don't think I would recommend it to other people, to be honest. So yeah, I gave this book 3 stars. I give it like a 2 for spice, and then I would say read it in the spring if you want to read it when it happens. Yeah, that's Wish You Were Here. The next book that I read was Smalltown Big Magic by Hazel Beck. If you watched my vlog, you know that in the beginning of it, I was already not excited about it. It is a part of my never-ending quest to find the perfect, cute, witchy romance, and I still have not found it. This book was not it. Was it absolutely awful? No. I gave it 2 stars. Was it good? Not totally. I mean, okay, so let's compare it to the ones that I've already read. I've told you that I've read What You Gonna Do by Avery Flynn and The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I would say that, like, if I was forced to rank them so far, this one sits in the middle. I just felt, quite honestly, bored through most of it, and I didn't like the main character. She is, like, really obsessed with her town that she lives in. It's like a small town in Missouri, and like her whole personality is I love my town. And she doesn't know that she's a witch. She like knows that there might have been witches in her family, but it's not a spoiler to say that like pretty early on in the book she finds out that she's a witch, and it's like quite the culture shock to her. And so then, you know, madness ensues. She's figuring out she's a witch. She's falling in love with the male main character. But I just didn't totally care about it because a lot of it felt a little unrealistic. Like the way that the characters talked and interact with each other, a lot of the dialogue felt cheesy and quite honestly kind of immature, which I feel like happened in What You Gonna Do also. It just feels like they're middle schoolers talking to each other. And she's supposed to be 28. And so I felt like, as somebody who is not even 28 yet, I know that that's not how you would talk if you were a real person, you know? Yeah, she was just annoying. Kind of narcissistic. Not in like a mean way, but she does really think that like everything is about her, you know? There are unfortunately witch politics again. I don't understand why every witch romance has to include witch politics. Why? I don't need that. Like what I actually want is just a regular romance plot. I'm not saying that there can't be any conflict whatsoever, but like most regular romance books, the conflict is like within their relationship or like close to it, you know? In the witch romances, it's like the world is going to end and you need to figure out how to stop it with your witch powers. And also you're falling in love. And I just feel like those are two different books, you know? Like, it's one thing to have a book where witches are trying to save the world. It's another thing when you just want a cozy romance. And that's all that I want. I just want a cozy romance that feels good for Halloween and they're witches, they have powers, okay? That's it. But it's like, it's always overcomplicated and that honestly really irritates me. Something that is completely, it's irrelevant to the whole plot and it doesn't matter when you're trying to decide whether or not to read this book. But I need to mention it for myself because it irritated me so bad to the point where like I could actually laugh about it because it was so ridiculous. Every time they talk about like stopping, you know, the catastrophe that's threatening their town and the world, they kept saying we need to beat back the dark. And I don't know why. I don't understand why they were saying that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, my understanding of the book wasn't that some darkness is going to envelop the world and there will be no light ever again. So I don't know. And why do you have to beat back the dark? Like, it's not just beat the dark. I don't know. It felt so dumb to me. And it was like everybody's catchphrase. Everybody says it over and over again. Like, I wish that I had $1 for every time somebody said it. So yeah, the magic system was like more well-defined than the other ones that I've read, but it was just boring. I just didn't care. It was semi-well written with the exception of the dialogue, but I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest. Also, it strangely takes place in the spring. I just assumed that all like romance witch books took place in like October because witches, Halloween, you know? But it takes place in the spring. So if you're gonna read it and you want to read it like when it happens, read it in the spring, I guess. 2 stars, 2 out of 5 spice, written in 2022. There you go. The next book that I read was Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. This book originally was published in 1969, so keep that in mind. There are multiple versions of this book, and some of them are a little bit updated, some of them are not. I listened to the audiobook, but I also had it on Kindle, and they were a little bit different. Like, just the wording of certain phrases that are a little bit less than politically correct. So yeah, there are problems. There are small problems with this book. I'll get into that in a minute, but keep in mind it came out in 1969. So this book was recently made into a movie called A Haunting in Venice. I actually saw the movie before I read the book. Now, normally I would always suggest that you do it the other way around. You read the book, then you watch the movie. However, I personally believe that with Agatha Christie's, it's better to watch the movie than read the book, because when they change things, because they do, you will be less disappointed, because then you can look at them as like two separate entities. There's the book, which you love, and the movie, which you love, and they're totally different. And when I say totally different, I'm not joking. Like, A Haunting in Venice compared to Halloween Party is akin to like Archie Comics and Riverdale. Like, they use a couple of the same names and places. There is a Halloween Party in both of them, but they are not the same plot by any means. Like, not at all similar. This is a story of a teen Halloween party gone awry. And of course, because this is a Poirot book in the Poirot series, he is called in to investigate the murder. That's not a spoiler. There's a murder. There's always a murder. Like, it's a Poirot book, he's gonna investigate a murder. If you've seen the other, specifically Kenneth Branagh, Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie movies, then you'll know that like his general style of explaining the entire crime and how it was carried out and who it was and what the motive was is normally akin to like Sean Spencer's wrap-ups at the end of each episode of Psych. In the book, that's not how it is. In the movies, that is how it is. He rounds everybody up and he's like, you did this and you did this and blah blah blah. That's not how it happens in this book, which is fine. That's okay. But if that's what you're looking for, if you want that like big cast of characters that all comes together at the end, that's not what this is. He goes to like each person, each party of people that were involved somehow, or maybe they know something some way, and he's asking them questions, he's figuring things out with his special detective skills that only he has. And then he pieces everything together in the end for like only the couple of people that are important. So I'm just saying that because it follows a way different format than the movie, than all the movies, and the plot's different. So if you want to read it, go ahead, read it. But know that it is not anywhere close to A Haunting in Venice. Like, if you've even seen the trailer for the movie, it's like, it feels like there's something supernatural going on. There's a seance. There's like all of these things that are nowhere to be found within the book. So just know that. Obviously, read it in the fall, read it around Halloween. That's the perfect time to read it. I gave this book 3 stars because I've definitely read better Agatha Christie's, but it wasn't bad by any means. The next book that I read in October was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Let me just say, the hype is real. This book is so good. This book is 5 stars good. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was so cute. This book is about this girl named Clementine. She inherits a magical apartment from her aunt. She does not know that it's magical, but what it does is it randomly lets anybody inside the apartment slip forward or backward in time, and it's always 7 years for whatever reason. So when Clementine moves in after her aunt passes, she finds this random man in her apartment and finds that she has slipped back in time 7 years. He claims that he's staying there for the summer with her aunt's permission, and she's got to figure out like what to do. I absolutely love this book. I absolutely love the characters. I loved the setting. It's like New York in the summer. I would read it in the summer, but it wasn't like anything crazy like to where I felt like, ugh, I don't like that I'm reading this in the fall. But like, if you want to read it when it happens, read it in the summer. I loved how the author described the feeling of love through food. The male main character is really into cooking, and I just love how he talks about food and like how they describe food in the book. Like, it'll make you hungry, seriously. I love the supporting characters. I also really loved how the author describes grief. I feel like it felt really real to me and not like slapped together or like an idealized version of what going through grieving a family member is like. It reminded me a lot of This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. I read that book last year. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I would recommend it to pretty much anybody. I would read it again. I really want to own a physical copy of it. I borrowed it from the library, so I actually don't have it. But this book really reminded me of that. I was also thinking about the show The Bear on Hulu a lot while I was reading this, because good portions of it, like I said, talk a lot about food or talk about working in a restaurant. It definitely reminded me of that show, which I would highly recommend, by the way. The writing also felt like Emily Henry to me, which I really enjoyed because I am obsessed with Emily Henry. So if you like her books and you want to try an author that kind of feels like her, I would recommend this author. It was great. I definitely recommend. It came out this year, gave it 5 stars, a 2 for spice. But yeah, like, I would probably read this again, to be honest. The last book that I read this month was Cersei by Madeline Miller. It's a literary fiction. It came out in 2018 and I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I would give it like a 1 for spice. Not really anything there, but there are scenes, you know. I would say trigger warning for sexual assault. That's in this, so just be wary of that. I would have liked to have known that before I started this book, and it's nothing like too graphic. I've definitely read worse accidentally, but just know that that's in here. Cersei is the story of the goddess Cersei, daughter of Helios, the god of the sun. When Cersei is born, she's born with some typically mortal traits that make her kind of an outsider amongst the like pantheon of Greek gods that she lives with. She is immortal, and this story tells the story of her whole life, so it takes place throughout every season. You can read it whenever you want. This book really takes a look at the heaviness that comes with her immortality and having to live with the choices and mistakes that she's made, not just for a regular lifespan, but for an eternity. And knowing that you're going to have to continue living with the choices that you've made forever. She goes through so much and she becomes so much throughout this book. The prose is really beautiful, to be honest. Like, that might be one of my favorite parts, like just listening to the audiobook and listening to how well written it was. I can't wait to read Song of Achilles because I really trust that she's like an amazing writer. The story is super inspiring and awesome, but I will say there are some times when you're a little bit bored. It does feel like it drags a little bit. However, it almost feels like that might be intentional because it really paints a picture of what Cersei feels like, since a lot of the story takes place during her banishment. She's banished to an island to live alone because of something that she's done. And I think that she feels a little bit bored too. And so I feel like going through those monotonous points of her life with her, like it's illustrated really well. I did give it a 4 because of the dragging a little bit and because unfortunately I wasn't warned beforehand. I didn't read trigger warnings, so that did feel like a little bit upsetting to me, but it's a beautiful book and I would recommend it for sure. Okay, that is every single book that I read in October. I feel good. I feel accomplished. I'm ready to dive headfirst into November and keep reading more. I also want to say this is like the first time that I'm filming since putting up my other videos, and it might not seem like a lot, but like I really appreciate all of the views that I've gotten because it's far exceeded my expectations on what I thought would happen when I like just started a YouTube channel. I started this channel because I feel like as a reader, my favorite thing ever is to talk to other people about books that we've both read. Like, that's just the most fun thing in the world. So if you've read any of these books, please tell me in the comments. Please tell me what your thoughts are. I'd be so excited to hear them. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!